From Informa Tech Target, I'm Beth Pariseau, and this is IT Ops Query. This podcast distills the signal from the noise about enterprise software development and platform engineering. Each week, we'll talk to expert guests about the latest tech industry news and trends that engineering and IT leaders need to know. Don't forget to subscribe to IT Ops Query for more conversations on AI and the future of the enterprise digital workspace. Corey Sanders, Senior Vice President of Product at NeoCloud provider CoreWeave, leads product strategy and execution for the company. Prior to joining CoreWeave in early 2025, Sanders spent 2 decades at Microsoft in senior leadership roles spanning cloud engineering, industry-specific platforms, commercial product strategy, and large-scale enterprise partnerships. CoreWeave has notably received large investments from AI chip powerhouse NVIDIA and served as an exemplar cloud for NVIDIA's GPU chips. CoreWeave counts several frontier AI companies as its customers, including IBM, Mistral, Neuralift AI, and OpenAI. Welcome, Corey. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Beth. This is great to be here.
So I recently interviewed another industry leader who'd left Google recently for a NeoCloud company. So I'll start with the same question I asked him. Why CoreWeave and why now?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple reasons. I spending 20 years at Microsoft, I loved my time there, right? And it was a great experience. I learned everything I know, more or less, about building product and product strategy, working with customers, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I think the opportunity and sort of the reason why I looked at CoreWeave and then got really excited and now have really enjoyed my time here has been this shift towards AI, this sort of opportunity to build an first AI-focused platform. I think it's sort of a great new challenge to an existing problem. When I worked at Microsoft, I built out some of the original infrastructure as a service product. And in some ways, I get the chance to do a lot of that again, but with this sort of new AI world and AI focus on top, and that changes a lot of the design points, changes a lot of the things that we're building and supporting, and obviously changes the customer scenarios we're enabling. And so I think that opportunity and CoreWeave being sort of the leader in that AI focused deployment model and cloud solution is really one of the big reasons why I was very excited to join and take on the product here.
Okay. And just sort of briefly, what's CoreWeave's claim to fame among NeoClouds other than the NVIDIA partnership? What's its approach to that system design?
Yeah, I mean, the overall thinking at CoreWeave, when you take the entire stack from sort of the weights and biases platform all the way down to sort of the core GPUs being offered, is that we offer the essential cloud for AI. It is sort of the top to bottom experience for model development and training, global production deployment and inferencing, the launch of AI apps, the sort of observability of all aspects of the platform, so that customers can come to CoreWeave and deploy everything that's required either to train, learn, or deploy their AI application on our infrastructure and our set of services on top. And so that full end-to-end platform is really sort of where I think CoreWeave is unique, both from the other NeoClouds and from the big hyperscalers, and where we sort of have a great place with customers.
Still, it's a relatively new company, right? And I don't know how much it's targeting enterprises, but obviously a company like Microsoft is familiar already to enterprise IT. So how does a company like CoreWeave gain trust from enterprises against competitors like that?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we approach when we talk with enterprises, and we definitely do target enterprises, the full range from AI labs, AI enterprises, all the way up to sort of existing enterprises who are doing AI work, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few places that we focus on winning customers' hearts and minds. One is obviously being a leader when it comes to benchmarks and sort of provable, repeatable places in the market. Recent sort of one of the first clouds to receive exemplar status with the NVIDIA benchmark that they launched both on inferencing and training, and so these help certainly customers get a sense of confidence that what we're building, the reliability, the observability, the overall experience that they're going to get is going to meet a very high standard. But then we also to your point, we also recently launched this a new service called Arena.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point of Arena was really around enabling customers to be able to try before they buy, really enable them to come in, work with our experts, bring their workloads. And so they don't have to just rely upon, a market benchmark. They can come in and try their workloads, experience the platform, whether it be sort of our leading observability, detection of issues, all the way up to, some of the best storage performance that you can find for AI workloads. And so we bring customers in, give them this experience, and then allow them to decide for themselves whether it's a service or product that they're really looking to grow on.
Is there a cost to Arena?
So, there is a cost to the experience, but for the most part, as customers come in, that basically feeds into whatever purchase they would make, right?
Okay.
So it ends up becoming somewhat of a wash for any customers who end up doing a broader business with us.
Okay. And where do you see enterprises at this point in the adoption curve? Is it still mainly those frontier companies, or are enterprises starting to hop on board?
Yeah, it's the sort of, $1 billion question, I guess, for all of us, isn't it? The I will admit, I expected more enterprise deployment at this point in the cycle. When I was at Microsoft for the original launch of sort of ChatGPT, I was predicting at that point within a year, every enterprise was going to rewrite their entire application profile. I was a little bit ahead of myself, I think, or ahead of the market, maybe. But I will say, I am now starting to really see the energy develop amongst enterprises. I am starting to see people moving from sort of what I call the silly chatbots, which every page now has this chatbot, and I sort of equate it to those original little construction guys on websites, right? It's like the first thing people do is they put a chatbot on their website, and they're helpful, but they're not changing the game. I think we are starting to see more and more enterprise, regardless of the vertical, looking at AI changing their business and actually changing the game for their end customers and for how they do things internally. So the shift is happening. Again, I feel like every year I say this is the year, but Beth, I think this is the year.
You're right. I mean, you're not the only person that thought the shift would be faster. So why do you think it's been slower than a lot of people expected?
I think there's been a variety of things, and some we're actually actively trying to help resolve, right? One of the things is around, frankly, flexibility to innovate. I think with a relatively constrained market, we're finding a lot of enterprises struggle to carve out enough just to try things out, right? Carve out sort of the ability to test things. And even something like Arena is a good example, giving people the chance to say, which specific GPU is the right one for me, or what specific service is the right service for me. It's been a challenge, I think, for a lot of enterprises to be able to experiment with new solutions, because, you oftentimes have to make a pretty large investment just to get started. And, we have a pretty big goal at CoreWeave that we can enable more enterprises to get started quicker and easier. And Arena is sort of the first of a few capabilities we have to enable that. And then I also think, and this is where, our weights and biases, particularly our Weave platform on weights and biases, also really helped. I think there's anxiety over being the headline, right? Being the sort of, the ones that everyone makes fun of for having this chatbot that said something ridiculous, right? And so there's this anxiety over, is it going to have the right guardrails? Is it going to have the right controls? Am I protected from the AI agent going crazy? And I think this is where a product like Weave, which allows you to document all your code and make sure that every time you're calling into an agent, it's clear what it's doing, and you can put up guardrails and sort of make sure you're protected against it. So I think we're seeing those tools and those capabilities expand, and that's going to enable more comfort from enterprises as they start making their way. And then maybe one last thing. I love I love talking. I'm sorry, Beth.
No, it's cool.
I'm just going to talk the whole time, and so it's great.
That's the idea.
I think the other thing is, just like actually we saw in the early days of cloud, oftentimes it just takes one or two to really sort of poke in and make the leap. And we're
Mm,
starting to see a few of those customers even working with us,
mm,
and they then push their entire industry forward, because you don't want to be, for many of these industries, you don't want to be the first, but you definitely don't want to be the last.
right.
And so I think we're really starting to see that momentum pick up some steam. And again, I think we're gonna see some amazing applications start popping up across the year.
So, yeah, and another trend that's emerged so far this year, beginning with the NVIDIA Vera Rubin launch in January, is AI inference as the big buzzword, at least for the frontier folks that are on the bleeding edge. So, how do you see that trend unfolding, and what do you think that'll mean for enterprise IT leaders long term?
Yeah. I definitely see that the inferencing workloads start taking more attention and start taking more focus from customers, and particularly, like you said, enterprises. I think we'll continue to see some amount of training from enterprises, taking open source models and modifying them or tweaking them for their specific scenario. But I think we'll see more and more customers coming in looking at how are they going to deploy their inferencing workload. And we recently just worked with a customer who, I expected them to come in with sort of all of these requirements around how they were going to change their model and focus on training their model. And so we had set up this big training conversation for them. And then when they got into the room, they're like, no, no, we're fine with the open source models. They're actually pretty good right now. We really just want to understand how we can deploy this with guaranteed performance.
Hmm.
And so it was like a complete shift. And I was like, oh, I brought all the wrong people. It was embarrassing, but it's fine. But it was all focused on, we don't need help on building the model. We need help on running the model.
Mm,
And that shift was, I think, so representative of, I think, where the market is going.
mm,
It is about how do you get back to really some of the original goals of building a web app. How do you
mm,
make sure you're delivering the best performance, the best reliability, at the best cost? And this is another area that I think Corey just excels so much in, is with our observability and our mission control, which is, an AI operating standard. We help customers figure out what is the right SKU for them, what are the right services to deploy, and then how to run it in such a way that they're going to get the performance they need for the right cost. And that's
mm,
the trade-off, right? It's, you could always throw a lot of resources at something, it costs a lot, and then suddenly you're not getting the benefit. And so how do you find the perfect balance between exactly how much of the GPU you're going to use, and making sure that you're paying the right price for it and getting the right reliability out of it. And so this is again where I think we're going to have a unique edge with enterprises.
Is it possible that a focus on inference could change the sort of infrastructure cost equation for enterprises too? Like if they don't need to be training their own models, will it be a bit more accessible?
Yes, I think so. I believe it will at least change the dynamic of the financial considerations, and this is where I also think more flexibility in sort of how people purchase and use the platform is going to be key. Training for the most part, and people go up and down, but for the most part, when you have a job, you sort of know how big the job is going to be. You set aside the capacity, you run your job, presumably it finishes successfully,
Mm,
and you move on, right? And so
mm,
you kind of have a sense of these chunks of capacity that you're going to use. With inferencing, it's much more variable, right? You sort of you have an application you've built for inferencing, and it takes off, and suddenly you're going through the roof and what you need, but maybe you only need it during the day and you don't need it
mm,
at night. And so a lot of the promise of sort of cloud flexibility, I think, needs to be brought back to AI and AI
mm.
workloads, to be able to enable that flexibility.
Right, right. And, another thing that's been, on the minds of a lot of execs in tech right now is whether the industry is actually going to be able to meet the immense demand for AI data center resources, including power. And
Mm.
so I just wonder, from your perspective, what's the biggest obstacle to doing that, especially sustainably?
We are in a constrained market, right? That is
Mm,
for sure. I think there is significant demand, especially as these workloads again continue to take flight with enterprises. And I think one of the things that we focus on a lot at CoreWeave is to your point, doing things in a sustainable way, delivering upon the requirements of customers in sort of a clean approach, and with consideration to communities where we're building and so on. And so, there's a big part of how the infrastructure is built and how we support customers that I think will enable better delivery based on those needs. And one good example is for liquid cooling. One
Mm,
of the big things that we focus on liquid cooling, which a good set of the most powerful GPUs require liquid cooling, and so
mm-hmm,
effectively it requires us to run water through the system, right? And so instead of just blowing air, you need water to cool
mm,
down these really really hot chips while they're doing this computation. One of the things that we have shifted and focused on a lot is called closed loop liquid cooling. So effectively, the water goes through, it cools the system, and then we sort of cool it on our side,
mm,
versus pulling from the local community and pulling all of the water
mm,
in sort of a nonstop usage of water resources. And so that these are sort of the examples of where you can really have a big impact in sort of by designing and focusing on how these solutions are built and making sure we are optimizing and using the precious resources in the best way possible to
mm.
deliver the services. And so, closed loop liquid cooling is a good example of that. It's, obviously more efficient, but certainly does help reduce the impact to the water supply. And that's, a really important resource amongst many others out there.
Right. Yeah. What about power? I mean, it seems like, that's also, I mean, to your point about closed loop liquid cooling, would need power to, run that system. So is there a way to approach that more sustainably or efficiently that CoreWeave's working on?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's certainly the opportunity to use more clean power, to use sort of more renewable power. It's also an effort that we've been working on closely with a lot of government agencies
Mm,
to sort of think through how best to optimize power usage and support it. And so this is an area that we're constantly focusing on in sort of making sure we're delivering all the needs to our customers while also sort of maintaining that focus on clean and renewable energy as much as possible.
yeah, I mean, the other NeoCloud leader that I talked to talked about designing, the infrastructure from the ground up to be more power efficient. That a NeoCloud can start with kind of a clean sheet of paper there? Is that
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly right. I mean, I think there's probably two things to say there. Certainly from a data center design, one of the big benefits of building AI centric based solutions is that you can focus on delivering upon the needs of an AI workload, right? And so in
Mm,
some ways you don't need to build out sort of a bunch of fungible resources and fungible deployments that may need to go deploy for a website or for an AI service, which of course are very different demands. We can sort of build from the ground up and sort of enable AI centric based deployments and architectures. It's also a big reason why we recently announced that we were joining the Department of Energy's Genesis mission,
mm,
and it's really focused on many of these things, right?
mhm.
Focusing on research and innovation around sort of power and power consumption and usage. And so there's a lot of these projects that are very helpful and very critical, frankly, as we continue to see these workloads grow.
Do you think enterprise IT buyers are concerned about that sustainability and about the kind of ESG angle of AI, or are they still more focused on getting projects off the ground?
No, I think I think they definitely ask questions and they're
Mm,
concerned about it. Yeah, I mean,
mhm.
it also depends a little bit on which region you're in and sort
Right.
of the impact of those regions and where those customers are based,
Mhm.
and the focus that those customers have from a business perspective and an ecological perspective. So yes, it definitely comes up. I think
Mm,
questions and considerations around sort of the power sourcing, water consumption, community sort of opportunities, et cetera. They
mhm.
definitely do come up, obviously in the context of these tough projects that they're trying to
Yeah,
solve and deliver for their end customers.
right. So, um, what is the next frontier for CoreWave and for AI and neoclouds? How do you see this year unfolding?
Yeah, I think A lot of it is going to be, frankly, the things we've talked about, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
we're going to see a lot of new workloads and new requirements from enterprise. I think they're going to expand their usage. I think we're going to see a big shift towards inferencing and sort of AI applications, and I think that's going to include a full range of AI application requirements, right? So one
Mm.
area that we've been pretty excited about is reinforcement learning, as an
Mm.
example. When for customers who are doing inferencing workloads, oftentimes they get feedback or sort of responses that may not have been perfect. And so
Right.
reinforcement learning is the ability to take that and sort of improve the model in a
Mm.
continuous way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that being built into your AI application, we think is a pretty big opportunity. And so we recently acquired a company called OpenPipe,
Mm.
and integrating sort of that type of reinforcement learning directly into an inference experience,
Mm.
I think is going to be a big opportunity for customers to just make their apps better and better and better.
Is reinforcement learning, this is the first time I'm hearing that term. So is reinforcement learning a thing that is done sort of by AI or algorithmically, or is it something that humans kind of participate in?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, reinforcement learning, it's funny. I was pitching reinforcement learning back at Microsoft
Mm.
before ChatGPT existed, right?
Wow.
In some ways, it was one of the one of the earliest, I think, usages of AI
Hmm.
in much more practical cases. The concept of reinforcement learning is effectively taking something that can be tested, right, in a
Mm.
fairly easy way with provable outcomes, provable answers.
Right.
And you effectively test an algorithm over and over and over again until you can kind of smooth it out to the point that you get to the answer you want, right? And so
Right.
there's a lot of, you know, um, uh, manufacturing usage cases for reinforcement learning well before, large language models and all of the, surrounding capabilities came out. Detecting anomalies, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
detect an anomaly, and over time it will say it's an anomaly, and you do need humans in the loop or something in the loop to
Mm.
be able to validate, yes, it's right, or no, it's wrong, that wasn't
Mm-hmm.
an anomaly. And it learns, and it gets better and better and better, and the model gets better. And so it it was very valuable for a very small set of scenarios. And I think what we're seeing now is with sort of the expansion of the LLM based inference application,
Mm.
the opportunity for reinforcement learning to then be used to improve it with perhaps the inference solution feeding answers to it,
Right.
creates a really nice sort of symbiosis between these two types of AI technologies.
Hmm.
And so I'm excited about it. I think it's going to continue to grow.
Mm.
I think there's a good debate over, does it continue to grow, or do the large language models just get better and better and better,
Hmm.
such that they don't need it? I don't know, right? I think
Right.
we're going to have a lot to learn over the course of the year, but I think it's a great area of science to help either improve model creation or to deliver upon improved inference applications.
Mm.
And this is where one of the places I think we're focusing a lot is making sure we've got all the supporting capabilities from weights and biases all the way down to CoreWeave for an AI application to run. So whether it's be supporting AI focused storage, which we offer in sort of our object storage solution and our caching solution called Lotta Cache, all the way up to things like OpenPipe, or solutions maybe like a sandbox-based solution or an inferencing solution. All of these things are going to come together for a customer to be able to deploy their solution.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I'm excited. You can
And
tell I'm excited.
yeah. So since you mentioned storage, is Lotta Cache, is that integrated with, or will it be integrated with the NVIDIA KV cache that just came out?
Yeah, it's a great question. The answer is it will be. Yes.
Will be, yeah.
The current Lotta Cache is very focused on the training side,
Oh,
right? And
okay.
so right now the Lotta Cache that we built is very focused on feeding the GPUs with as much data as possible. It works
Mm.
in a coordinated way across multiple GPUs. And in fact, we support it across multiple clouds. And so people can use the Lotta Cache when they're deploying on other clouds. And because we have no egress charges for our object storage, it makes it, much cheaper for people to use our cache in other clouds, combined with deploying in our cloud. So it's very focused on training today. But yes, you nailed it. That's exactly sort of a direction for the cache to integrate with KV cache and
Mm.
deliver, again, much faster sort of input into the GPUs when they're doing inferencing.
That's also an area where the industry is facing some resource constraints, with I heard someone the other day call it RAMageddon, the memory shortage. So
That's good. RAMageddon, that's good. Yes.
how do you see that affecting CoreWeave's supply chain, or, what's the contingency for that?
Yeah, no, it's look, I mean, any sort of supply constraint creates challenges, right? For
Mhm.
especially for a market that's growing at such a pace.
Mm.
And so, I think a big part of it's going to be, in addition to just making sure we're supporting customers who have purchased or who plan to purchase, that we have the capacity they need. But in many ways, it's also focusing on software solutions, right? And
Hmm.
this is again similar to with the sort of closed loop liquid cooling. How do we think about our software solutions to be able to optimize usage, to be able to make sure that we are taking advantage of aspects of like our global deployment? How do we
Mhm.
support customers globally with capacity we may have here versus here, and
Mm.
make it seamless to them, again with the caching solutions, such that they don't even know or care. And so that type of flexibility, it's also something pretty unique with CoreWeave, where we're building the software on top to give you that flexibility, to give you that ease of deployment, because we are not so constrained to sort of the existing legacy cloud concepts around sort of tight region deployment and sort of region
Mm.
definitions. And so that fungibility, that flexibility we have, it creates opportunities for us to better utilize and then support our customers when these types of constraints hit.
Well, interesting times, as they say. Lots going on.
Very exciting times, I think. I'm really enthusiastic about what's coming, and I think we're going to learn a lot. We learn a lot every month, but I think we're going to learn
Mm.
a whole lot over the course of this year.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, again, thanks for taking the time to join
Thank
today,
you,
and
Beth.
your perspective on things. And yeah,
I
good
really
talk.
appreciate it. This was fun. Yeah, hopefully we'll talk again. If I didn't
Indeed.
talk too much, we'll talk again.
No such thing. It's okay.
Thanks, Beth. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to IT Ops Query. To learn more about enterprise software development and platform engineering, explore our content on Informa Tech Target sites. Find us on YouTube at our channel, Ion Tech. Subscribe to our podcast to receive the latest episodes as they drop. And if you liked what you heard today, give us a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Thank you for joining us.